I feel like something really shifted for me in the last week. For the first time in 6.5 years, all of a sudden I got customers. $1,000 here, $2,000 there, another $1,000, promise of $5,000 over here, to do these interviews like family history, and also to talk to people about their books, to talk out their books. Because I don't know if you've thought about it, but it's possible to finish your book without ever writing a single word. Well, how can you do that? I'm not going to go into a long song and dance about that, but if you're interested in that notion, it could be the difference between finishing your book or never finishing it, like just talking about it. If you're interested, I can always help. Why don't you just shoot me an email at stu, S-T-U, @manlistening.com if you're interested in that. I'd be happy to help you if I can. Thanks.
It was about finding your place on earth and feeling like you were needed and that you had a place on earth.
What is the sound of one man listening? This is Man Listening, a fresh podcast featuring the stories of strong women who bounce back. Man Listening, because every woman deserves to be heard.
Hi, I'm Stuart Watson, and welcome to Man Listening. Jane Gould was working with my friend Ann Heffron on writing a book, and Jane Gould has multiple sclerosis. And language alert, warning, not for children, Jane Gould is frankly dying of that, and she's writing a book about it, which is absolutely brilliant, called M-fucking-S. And it really speaks to where she is with the disease, and she's so full of life and vigor and humor and warmth that you just fall in love with her. And I know I did. And so we've included like almost a full hour with Jane. But I'll warn you, on the front end, we talk about anorexia, we talk about suicidal ideation, we talk about heavy stuff. But first, we talk about rugby and Shakespeare and, her almost getting kicked out of Catholic school and moving to San Francisco. And, oh, it's just so wonderful. I so admire. Words can't even express my admiration for Jane Gould. Where were you born?
I was born in Coventry, England.
I don't know where that is. Where is Coventry? What part of the country?
Coventry is actually about an hour and a half north of London. Its closest city is Stratford-upon-Avon, which is the home of William Shakespeare. And I actually was raised in a town called Rugby, which is the home of rugby football.
Really?
Yes.
Are you a fan?
I am not a fan of rugby football. However, I know all the history. I can give you a whole podcast on the history of rugby football.
That's okay.
But I am a real football fan.
Are you a fan of William Shakespeare?
I am a big William Shakespeare fan, yes.
Did you go see any plays in it's a reconstructed Globe, right?
The Globe Theatre is actually on the River Thames in London.
Oh, sorry.
But in Stratford-upon-Avon is the Royal Shakespeare Company Theatre, which is a beautiful theatre. And yes, I went to many, many plays there. And then my first play that made me fall in love with William Shakespeare was Midsummer Night's Dream, which was set outside, and they used an ancient castle called Warwick Castle as the set. And it was incredible because Titania would come out of the bushes and they used the trees. And so, yeah, a kid growing up near Stratford is pretty magical.
And so they actually played in the trees. They would incorporate the natural setting.
Yeah.
And of course it was at night.
Yes, with the fairy lights, and really incredible.
That magical.
Yeah, Yeah, so when you're like a, I don't know, 12-year-old kid or something, and you're supposed to be like, oh, all cool, but you go and see something like that, it's just mind-blowingly awesome.
And for purposes of understanding Jane, what should I know about your mom and dad?
My mum and dad, my mum is an Episcopalian priest. So she's a
Wow.
vicar, like the vicar of Dibley, except she would
Was
kill
she
me.
new? Was she new to the priesthood? But were there many women when she
No,
became?
she was I want to say the first or second round of women to be ordained. So she was kind of a trailblazer.
And are
So
you Episcopalian? Do you
yes,
go?
I
You
do.
do.
Yeah, I do. I kind of dip in and out.
What appeals to you about it?
So, oh gosh, this is a funny story. So I have always had a connection with kind of the unseen world, I would say. So and my mum tells this great story. Apparently, when she was pregnant with me, every time she would go to church on Sundays, she went to quite a high church where they had the incense, and apparently, whenever that came out, I would go nuts in her belly, like jumping around. And so she said she knew from there that I had some kind of affinity. As a kid, I wanted to be a nun when I grew up. That was, if you asked me what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a nun. And then I went to church schools. And then I actually went to a Catholic high school for a couple of years, which I loved. It was the first school that actually got me to do any work. And
What
then
appealed to you about that? I mean, you hear a lot of Catholic school horror stories about the nuns whipping people, but what?
I know. Well, at my Catholic school, it was run by Catholic fathers. It was a boys' boarding school. It was, oh my gosh, it was incredible. It was on the top of this hill, kind of Harry Potter style, in the middle of the countryside. And then they welcomed girls for the 2 last years. So for the ages of 16 through 18, they allowed girls in the school. And
You
there
said
wasn't.
allowed and welcomed. Those are two different things.
They
Did
probably
they welcome?
I think
Did they, in fact, welcome them?
I'm thinking they probably welcomed them because they were paying good money to attend the school, right?
Well, but what I want to know is, did the boys welcome them?
I'm sure the boys did welcome them, yes.
You felt welcome.
I felt welcome. There was a head of punishment at that school. And if the boys were naughty, they had to kneel on the ancient stone in their shorts for like a day. That was a real punishment. But
and if the girls were naughty, they did what?
I probably just got detention or something.
Oh, you were never naughty.
I was really naughty there. Yeah, I got suspended.
What did naughty look like?
I was at a school party and I got caught smoking weed.
Oh, who caught you?
Oh God, I have no idea.
This instantly makes you more interesting.
I got suspended for like a week from that school.
So on the one hand, you got suspended. On the other hand, you said they got you just lit up about education. So
Yeah.
what was it?
Okay, so here's what had happened was I kind of was a little bit of a rebel growing up. I went to a couple of different high schools because my careers at those high schools ended a little ominously. and then I ended up this was like my last chance, my third high school, and it was my last resort. And the principal, who was an Irish Catholic father, he was like, I'm willing to give you this chance if you want to come to this school, but you need to study these 3 subjects: English, religion, and music. And he was really intent on me studying religion. And I agreed that I would be good and I'd behave myself. Then, lo and behold, a few months later, I was at this party and decided it would be fun to get everyone high. So I got suspended. But then he was like, I had the big meeting in this big fancy office with the like wood panels and everything, and my parents. And he was like, I have, why should I keep you here? I really should just expel you. And I was like, no, please don't expel me, yada, yada. And so then his punishment for me was to meet him in his office, like on Monday morning, and he'd set me an extra essay to do. And then he wanted that essay like on his desk, I can't remember, but say by Wednesday afternoon. And then
And
Thursday
the topic
morning.
was?
Oh, well, these were religious essays. So
about like
something
what?
about on the Bible, like, you know, something to do with the Gospel of Luke, or I don't know, women in the Bible or something. So here's the thing. So then I was doing these essays. So my writing became really good because I was having to do like 2 extra essays a week. And he wouldn't accept crappy work. He was like I want like top-notch writing. And they had to be really good. And so I was doing an additional ton of work every week. And then he believed in me, and he thought they were really good, and he praised me. And then I found this balance of just keeping my partying to the weekend, and so that he didn't actually have to know about it. And that worked out well. And then I ended up with the best results in the school.
I do feel compelled to say that you didn't just smoke weed. You brought the party. Like you were the one who got everybody else. You were the bad influence. And
I was.
What did your mother, the Episcopal priest, think of her daughter, the party girl, the bringer of the party? What when she was sitting in this meeting, what did she think?
Oh, bless her. I think she didn't really know what to think. And I think she was just like, oh no, Jane, please just be good. Just behave yourself. But the funniest thing about this was my dad, when we got home, he was just like, Janie, why on earth would you do it at the school party? And why were you stupid enough to get caught?
See, that's more pragmatic. You know, dads are practical kind of people. They ask dad questions. They're not into shame and, you know, they're into, just bring it over to the backyard or something.
Exactly.
You know,
Come on. He's like, if you're going to do it, why would you do it at school? You're just so stupid. I'm like, sorry, Dad.
What about religion? So this is an academic as well as an experiential.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell you, first of all, one thing that you just reminded me of, like on the experiential subject. I had these little experiences growing up. For example, one time I was at this school, this high school, and it's a magical place. It really is like Harry Potter. I was having a really hard time, and I was super pissed off about something. And there was this incredible chapel, big, beautiful chapel with the stained glass windows and everything. And I went and spent my lunchtime in this chapel. And I was just kind of having this chat with God. And I just remember like saying to God, like, dude, life sucks. Like, I hate my life. It's probably after I'd been suspended or something, right? And I was just like, everything sucks. I'm miserable. Like, you need to show me that you're real, because I'm just not buying any of this stuff. And then just like that, all the lights went off in the church and the windows went dark. And I just remember sitting there like, whoa, that's so cool. Like, thanks, God, you're the best. And so that was like one thing. I had this kind of going on. And then also the same time, I was partying really hard at weekends, and I was doing a lot of kind of class A drugs, which were like ecstasy and speed. And so I was having these kind of big experiences during this time. And then on the flip side, academically, I'd never really done any schoolwork. I hadn't been interested in school, thought the whole thing was a waste of time, until I met this father who got me back on track, or got me on track, I should say. The English that we were studying, and then the intricate way we were dissecting the Bible, and who wrote exact what passages, and what the passages really meant, and the relation of the passages within history, the historical context, and everything. It was so interesting to me that my brain just kind of exploded into the world of academia, which it had never tasted before. And that's when I fell in love with writing and reading.
So you graduate high school.
Finally.
And then what?
Then I went to the University of Sussex, which is in Brighton, which I chose because in the little blurb about it in the college book, it said London by the sea, sunniest place in England.
Then what did you study at Sussex and where'd you go from there?
I did a double degree in English and media.
Uh-huh.
And then after I left there, I got a job for a local newspaper company as a journalist. And then I did a journalism training course through that company. And then when I was in my mid-20s, like 23, my boyfriend got a job in San Francisco working for George Lucas on Star Wars, making video games. And he asked me to go with him. So I said, sure. So I left when I was about 23 and moved to San Francisco with him.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And what did you do in San Francisco?
So for the first 6 months, I did absolutely nothing and everything at the same time. I just took him to work and then I explored. And it was just super fun. I just drove around for 6 months and then I picked him up at the end of the day. So I just went anywhere and everywhere.
Wow. Within
driving distance of San Francisco, basically. So I did that for 6 months.
And so this boyfriend, he didn't say, get a job.
I couldn't get a job. I didn't have a visa.
Oh.
A work visa. Then close to the 6 month mark, I was starting to get kind of bored and sad. And I remember talking to my dad on the phone and he was like, well, honey, you need to just figure something out. You either need to come home or you need to figure out something to do. He's like, because you're obviously not just going to, dick around for the rest of your life. I put my feelers out and then I got a job working for an independent film PR company. And they did all of the film PR for San Francisco International Film Festival, Mill Valley Film Festival, San Francisco Lesbian and Gay Festival, as it was back then. And so I was kind of interning. So I was working for them for free, but I absolutely loved it and was kind of working like a proper job. I just wasn't really getting paid, but I was getting all of the benefits as I saw it. And I didn't really need the money so much because my boyfriend was doing well. So
did he become your husband?
He did. We got married in Vegas. I wore black. I had a long black dress and a black feather boa and black platform shoes.
Was this a spontaneous thing or did you guys plan?
It was spontaneous. It was spontaneous, helped by the fact that my 6 month visa was running out.
And so you could be the plus one.
Yeah. I still couldn't work officially, which I didn't, but I could stay in the country legally.
How'd you become a writer? Because what's happened between them?
Also, I've always loved to write. I had my first newspaper column printed when I was about 9 or 10 years old. I won a contest. I wrote a story about my cat walking to school with my brother. And it won a newspaper contest. So I loved that story. And then I've always wanted to write. I have started writing numerous books and I've just I've finished writing one book completely, but I haven't kind of pursued having it published.
What kind of book is that?
That's a teen lit book. I became an English teacher. When I was 40, I became an English teacher and I worked teaching at a middle school in Napa, California, which was about 70 to 75% Latino school. And so I wrote a book for the kids at that school because a lot of the kids at that school are English second language learner kids. So I didn't find enough books that were kind of written for that audience at that level.
What's the book about?
So the book actually is about a girl who lived in Mexico and had loved her life in Mexico. She was like 12 or 13 years old. And her uncle becomes really, really sick. And they don't have good enough health insurance for him in Mexico. And he needs money to pay for his health insurance. So her mom and dad moved to Vallejo, California for the dad to get a job picking grapes. They come in illegally and it's about her experience at middle school, her getting picked on and beat up. And she becomes anorexic, so she deals with anorexia. There's a lot of talk about her mom and dad getting kicked out and how she would handle that and that kind of thing.
Did you see girls with anorexia?
Well, I was anorexic for a while when I was at university, and there was one girl that I knew at the school who had anorexia, yes. And I don't think it's something that we necessarily associate with the Latino population because, I don't know, we just don't, it's not a big thing. We don't really talk about it that much. So I wanted to give it something kind of a little bit edgy and interesting, but it also needed to be something that I could speak to because I have personal experience of it.
How did you survive your anorexia?
I was saved, in inverted commas, by a hypnotherapist when I moved to San Francisco. So I'm about 5'5" in height, and I've always been pretty tiny. I'm an athlete and I was a dancer, so I've always been probably about 125 pounds, maybe about 125 pounds. When I was at my lightest, I was probably down to about 90 pounds, maybe 85 pounds. I was really, really sick. I lost my hair. And when I moved to California, I found a hypnotherapist, like a traditional old school kind of lie you on the couch and hypnotize you. She was a miracle worker. And so what she did was she reprogrammed my brain to make me eat regularly. So I don't know if she healed the anorexia per se, but I physically now can no longer go more than like 3 hours without eating. Even if I try and trick myself, I can't. There's something in me that's like, oh, you haven't eaten, you must eat now.
I've never been close to anorexia, but I have friends with daughters, and it's terribly, terribly upsetting, anorexia and bulimia. What would you tell a dad? How can a dad support a daughter or at your age, I guess it would have been boyfriend?
There's a few things I would say. First of all is just to make that person feel absolutely loved exactly as they are, and say it, like tell them how much you love them. Don't assume that they know, because I think with anorexia, for me, I needed that validation. I needed to be told, and just knowing it wasn't enough. I also had to be told that I was perfect the way I was. And then I had to understand that food was a fuel, an analogy of like your car's not actually going to run unless you eat. I mean, unless you give it gas, like your body isn't actually going to run unless you give it food. I would also just kind of try and guide that person to finding what you can to help them that does help them. So for example, I went to therapists and I did this and that, and it was just all stupid. Like I remember one therapist asking me like, what was your relationship with food as a kid? And I'd be like, well, my mom used to force feed me fish sticks. Like, well, that's not really for me, it was just a waste of time. So
in other words, that was disconnected from the anorexia.
It had nothing to do with it. Like, it wasn't about the food. It was way more than that. It was about finding your place on earth and feeling like you were needed and that you had a place on earth. It's the most complicated of conditions. I don't even think I've necessarily worked through it. All I know is that I've reprogrammed my brain to no longer have it. Does that make sense?
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, because it's it's a life-threatening illness that's so misunderstood. And it's not unlike substance use disorder, addiction, in the sense that, and a lot of times there's comorbidity. They are co-occurring disorders. I think there are a lot of people think, well, if someone is not sexually assaulted, let's say, then they like, what is underlying it? There's a lot of misunderstanding about what underlies it.
And I don't even know if you can pinpoint one thing.
Right.
Like, it's like, because for me, as far as I know, I wasn't sexually assaulted. I mean, I don't have a memory of that. Now, do I have a memory of 1,000 smaller things that could have built up into it? Absolutely. For example, I skipped school one day and was walking down this little narrow passageway behind school, having a cigarette. I told the math teacher to F off and left. A guy was walking up towards me and he had a raincoat, classic, a raincoat strewn over his arm. And he brushed, I can remember this as clear as pie, he brushed past my shoulder and lifted his raincoat, and he had his pants down and he was masturbating. And I was within inches of him. And then he just started to laugh and just walked past me. Now, I was only 13 at the time, maybe 14. I never told a soul. I didn't tell anyone ever. Why? Because I didn't want to get into trouble for skipping school. One time I got beat up by a boyfriend for doing something else, kicked to shit by a boyfriend but I was like 15 or 16. Did I tell anyone? No. So do you know what I mean? So there's
But you say that happened for doing something. There's nothing that justifies that.
Right. But in my mind, I'm like, well, what did I do to deserve to get kicked to shit by a boyfriend?
Wow.
And then he was still my boyfriend. He still loved me. And we still continued dating.
You keep using these air quotes.
I know, sorry. If you're listening to this,
no.
Put lots of air quotes around everything.
Yeah, that's wow.
So my point is, I feel like with anorexia, and then sometimes I've heard people talk about anorexia being involved, related to having a really strong, overpowering mom. But that even doesn't ring true to me, because my mum is really strong and she was overpowering. Was she the cause? Was she the sole cause? I don't think so. That's my point. And I think that that's why it's all about trying to just help the girls feel their place in the world. It's about finding your feet and knowing that you're good enough to be alive, ultimately. You have every right to be here, just like the person next to you. You're just as important as they are. And however you can get your kid to feel that, whatever it takes, whether it's therapy or hypnotherapy or whatever, then that's the message that they have to feel.
That's a huge spiritual message. The problem with people telling me things before I talk to people is that I have them in the back of my mind, and Anne told me several things about you, but one is she said you went to Oxford.
Oh, no. So this is a really interesting story. When I was at my Catholic high school, so in England, you do A-levels. Have you heard of A-levels?
No.
So you don't, when you, in high school finishes for kids in England at the age of 16. So if you go through regular high school at 16, then you leave and you can go and do whatever you want. Then some of the kids in England stay on for 2 more years and they do A-levels. And you usually do between 2 and 4 A-levels, and you pick very specific subjects. And then from there, you go to university and you choose one of those subjects, right? So my A-levels were English, religion, and music. I wasn't predicted to get very good A-level results because of the fact that I had was a loser and didn't do school. Then after my suspension, and I got, really made to do some work, then we discovered that I actually had this good brain and that I was actually very academic. I did get a place at the University of Sussex and to study English and media, and that was really brilliant. But when I got my A-level results, I got these incredible A-level results. I did really, really well. So one night I was at home straight after my results, and the phone rang, and it was someone from Oxford University. And they offered me a place to study religion. I was mind blown, because going to Oxford or Cambridge in England is incredible. It's an incredible feat, right?
It's like Harvard, it's the ticket.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen, especially not to someone like me. So I had this phone call and I was like, whoa, oh my God, this is crazy. But they didn't have a place for me that year. So I would have needed to have taken a year out and then gone the following year. Previously, my brother, who is the brilliant one in the family, and he really is, I'm not being facetious, he's brilliant. He had tried to get to Oxford and he'd taken the entrance exam and he didn't get in. And it was a big, sad occasion in our house because he's brilliant and he should have been going to Oxford. So when I got a call to get offered a place to Oxford, I was like, oh my God, mom, I got offered a place at Oxford. And her response was something along the lines of, oh yeah, it wouldn't suit you, sweetheart. This is a terrible idea. Just tell them no. And so I told them no, but I think my belief was that it was discouraged because my brother didn't get in and he was the one who should have got in because he's the brilliant one. So I couldn't possibly have gone because it would have really upset the apple cart. And so I didn't go. And that's one of my biggest regrets.
Had you gone to Oxford and studied religion, what's that Jane look like now?
I think completely different. I think I would have become an academic, and I think I probably would be teaching at Oxford now, and I'd be living in England.
You think you would have been happier?
I think I would have been as happy, yeah. Because I love the academic side of things. I think I would have gotten a lot. I think I'd probably have published a bunch of books. And I think I'd be quite top of my field in the academic religious world, like a scholar of religion.
But now you are writing another book, right?
I am, yes.
And I have just absolute fascination with this new book, which I cannot wait to see. Tell me about this new book. This new book is a memoir, right?
Yeah. So the new book is a memoir. Its working title, am I allowed to say it?
Of course.
Okay. Its working title is M-fucking-S, which stands for multiple fucking sclerosis.
Which I love.
And the reason, and I have actually started writing this book several times over the years, but it's never been right. And when I inserted the fucking in the middle, it has now taken a life of its own. And so I'm really excited about it.
So what was not right about it before?
Before, I think I was trying to write a book about MS. Like, this is what it is. And this is like, these are the tests you go through. And then
you were standing outside it and sort of lecturing on it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you nailed it. Yes, exactly that.
Yeah. And we should say you have MS.
Oh yeah. So I was diagnosed 20 years ago with relapse remitting MS, and then 5 years ago with secondary progressive MS.
What is relapse remitting MS?
Okay, so relapse remitting MS is the most common form of MS. More women than men diagnosed with it, generally between, I believe it's the ages of like, I could be totally wrong, but like 25 and 45 is like the most common time to be diagnosed with it. It's a neurological condition. It's an autoimmune disease. What it does is if you get sick, your body attacks the myelin sheath, which is the kind of coating around the outside of the nerves. So what happens is your nerves then fail to give the signals that they're supposed to send around your body in the central nervous system.
You were how old and you noticed what?
I was 28. I had just given birth to my first child. I have 2 kids. Literally like a couple of days later, I was in the shower and I noticed that I could turn the tap on to hot or on to cold and I couldn't feel the water. I had no sense of temperature.
You were like numb?
Yeah, so my skin was numb, but I could see that it was boiling hot or freezing cold, but I couldn't feel it.
And so you might see your skin turn red.
Mm-hmm.
Could you feel the drops on your skin?
No, I couldn't feel anything. So I actually could tell it was hot from the steam and then not the steam. Now, I put it down to I had a wild, fast, natural labor. So I put it down to that. I was like, oh, that labor just must have sent everything a bit weird.
Did you tell your doctor that you had
I
that?
didn't, because after a week or two, it was fine. And as I said, I was so absorbed in the whole recovery from this mad labor that I just thought it was connected to that. So then close to when she was 1, I took her on this hike in one of those baby backpacks. And it was a beautiful California day. And we hiked up a mountain with a friend, got home that night, and I couldn't cool down. And I was like, this is so weird. So I took a cold shower and I still couldn't cool down. And then when I put my chin down to my chest, it was like I got this firework that went down my spine, down my legs, and into my feet. And I could do it on demand. And it was super weird. So the next day I went to see a girlfriend who's a chiropractor. And I said, I think I must have done something to one of my nerves during my hike. So would you mind just adjusting me? So she adjusted me, went home, nothing changed. So then I went back to her the next day and was like, nothing's changed. It's super weird. And she was like, yeah, you need to go to emergency. So I went to the emergency room, and then tests started and visits started. And then I was diagnosed with MS.
How did you evolve from viewing MS as like, I have this condition and I take these to M-fucking-S? Where did that switch flip?
The switch flipped about 2 or 3 years ago for me, after I had secondary progressive MS. Usually comes between 15 and 20 years of the disease. And as it sounds, you're no longer relapse remitting, you get sick and then you get better again. You get sick and you get better again. Sometimes you can be sick for a week or a couple of months, but generally you kind of go back almost to normal, maybe not quite, but nearly. Secondary progressive is when you've had the disease for a long time, and then you're just progressing. So you're just going down. So that's where I am now. And it's pissed me off. Like it's shit, and it's pissed me off, and it's changed my mindset around MS. When it was relapse remitting, I had hope. I was, I thought, I'm beating this. I'm doing really well. I'm doing my diet and exercise and yoga and meditation, and I'm better than MS. I'm stronger than MS. But now it's kind of kicking my ass, and I'm feeling like it's kind of winning, and so it's become M-fucking-S now.
You said when you were in high school, in the chapel, you said to God, dude, I need to know that you're out there. So clearly you've been in this kind of protracted conversation, and you haven't given up. Now, when you address the divine or the universe or whatever, what do you say?
So now it's more kind of, okay, if this is it, then I don't really understand, but you win. I mean, it sounds a little lame, like I'm just giving up, and but it's almost like I don't understand why I have this disease. I don't know if I've done something wrong, but I don't know if there's a lesson for me. And I spend days, every day I try and work out, like, what's the lesson of this? Why am I experiencing this? And not like, why me, in a poor, like, oh, why me, poor me, but in a like, why, like, what is this about? So my conversations, I think I have less conversations now, and it's more just kind of sitting back and watching it.
Are you angry at God?
Yeah, I am angry at God, and I don't understand God. But I think that's fine. Like, I think a lot of people are angry with God. Like, I look at my mum. My mum's sister was killed in a car crash when my mum was in her early 20s. And my mum's father died when my mum was in her teens. So my mum went from this like lovely family of 4 to a family of 2 in a few years. And yet my mum is his like biggest believer you've ever met. So I think God is, like you said, I think he's fine, or he, she, whatever, is fine with people being pissed off. And I also think that the M fucking S is angry, but it's also like kind of just like a fuck, like M fucking S. Like it's angry, but it's also just like a whatever. Life is just life. And it's just, I just want the book to be real. And that's what I want, because I feel like most of the books that I've read about MS are either very scientific or very kind of woo-woo, like, you know, make sure you meditate enough and the law of attraction and, you know, think good thoughts. And trust me, I've been doing that for 20 freaking years and my MS is still getting worse and worse. And I don't want to take responsibility. I don't want to blame myself. Like I had someone in my life who used to tell me that MS, like I was the reason that my MS was there, because I wasn't doing enough meditating and I wasn't doing enough, like my thoughts weren't pure enough, et cetera, et cetera. And I have to get around that by saying,
What
like,
happened to that person?
that person got kicked out of my life.
Good for you.
Yeah.
What did it take for you to mute, to block that individual?
Okay. Oh my gosh, we're going there. So this was someone...
Oh yeah. That's hugely beneficial to people who have cancer, you know.
Okay. So this was someone who was very close to me and who was supposed to be my mate and
friend.
The thing, pardon?
Your friend, a good friend.
It was my ex-husband. There was a lot of build-up, but the straw that broke the camel's back for me, I had lost partial vision in my eyes due to MS, so I could no longer see color, and I couldn't see peripheral vision, so I could only just see black and white through the center. And I was going to 3 days of hospital treatment for intravenous steroids, which is proven to reduce inflammation in the optic nerve. And by the third day, I was really hopped up on steroids. So the amount of steroids they give you is the same amount as if you'd been in a high-speed motorcycle accident. So it's huge amounts of steroids to reduce the swelling in your brain. So by the third day, I was pretty hopped up. I was pretty kind of buzzing and a bit aggressive. We got into an argument about who was making the kids lunch or something completely stupid. He was pissed off enough that he was like, well, then you can make your own way to the hospital. And I couldn't drive. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I'm your wife and I need to go to hospital for my third day of treatment. And it was like, no, if you're this fired up, you can figure out your own way of getting to the hospital. And in my mind, I was like, if I saw a homeless person on the street who asked me to take them to the hospital, I'd stop what I was doing. I'd clear my car out and I'd be like, come on, dude, I'm getting you to the hospital. And that this is someone's wife. And then the straw that really broke the camel's back was that night. He came home and said, I'm going to take the kids away for the weekend to give you the chance to think about your behavior. So then I was left at home for the weekend, having just spent 3 days in hospital, completely high, not happy high, but wasted, worried that I wasn't going to be able to see anymore. And so when he got back, I was just like, yeah, we're done. You're out.
How did you get to the hospital that day?
I called a friend. I called her my American mom. So I called her and she came over and she took me and sat with me the whole day and then brought me home and looked after me that weekend.
So you did have someone who actually loved you that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was devastating. And then the worst thing as well was that the moms at my local elementary school had organized a meal chain thing for me, you know, where people would drop meals off every day. And so that weekend, they were coming over, checking on me and dropping meals off. And these are moms that I didn't know very well. Where's your husband and kids? Like, oh, not here. Oh, okay. Are you okay? So it just, but there was a lot of things that happened before that. But to me, it was just that I just didn't understand how someone could be that heartless.
Did you have someone during that time or subsequent that you can just hang on to that person and sob?
I didn't do a lot of sobbing, I don't think, because there was so much going on that it was almost like if I had started to sob, I wouldn't have ever stopped. So I think the sobbing came later, after I'd really removed myself from the situation. And then I had that American mom, and she's still, that was 12 years ago. She's still I call it, she's still there for me. And I have a new partner who's wonderful. I did have some good friends then, yeah.
So while your body is deteriorating, your psychological health, your spiritual health is just matching it. It's like matching it. You're stepping up. Like
Yeah.
Jane's spirit is stepping up big time.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I think the grieving part comes in now when I am having, and this has come from in the last couple of years, 3 years, is that what happens to my body is so heartbreaking that I have to cry as I'm going through it. For example, I'm going to get really raw now. For example, when I was teaching, I would drive 20 minutes from my home to my school. I'd say probably 3 times a week. While I was driving, my bowels I'd have an accident in the car. However, whatever my husband and I had tried, partner, he's not my husband, whatever we had tried, like, I don't know, laxatives the night before, smoothie, like everything to try and avoid that, everything you possibly could. Whatever it was, something would happen. And in the car, I couldn't control my bowels. Now I'm wearing old people's diapers. I'm in the car. I get to school and I get there early enough because I can predict that this might happen. I have to walk from my car, which is using crutches, drag myself into the bathroom, clean myself up, which is mortifying and uncomfortable and embarrassing and stinky. And then I have to like package everything away in all of the bags that I've got, like the Ziploc baggie, and then in the brown baggie, and the wipes go here. And I have to wash up and make sure that there's no poop on the back of my legs, and in case a student sees it, or there's no smell anywhere. Then I have to get on my scooter, because I had an electric scooter at school, try and get to a sneaky garbage pail without any kids seeing me, dump the package in. And so while I'm in the bathroom cleaning up, I'm crying, sobbing the whole time, because what has happened to this 45-year-old woman who used to be an athlete and a dancer and a yoga teacher, who's wiping shit off her leg at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd have to go teach, or that would happen in the middle of class. And I'm sitting there like praying to God the kids can't smell it, and just stuff like that. And so I would cry, and I cried daily, because the other alternative would be to scream, and I'm not a big screamer. But it just was like I'd leave my body and watch this woman going through this awful situation, and I would just cry. I'd cry for her, and I'd cry for everyone in the world dealing with that kind of stuff. And that's just a tip of the iceberg. That's just one little thing.
Generates this huge compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for yourself, but for this kind of suffering.
But it's not, and then not even just physical suffering. Like it generates compassion for everyone, like for the homeless person, or I live in Minneapolis, or for the Black community, or whatever community, like whoever is suffering. It's almost like, God, and for everyone, because, a lot of people have something going on. And so it does give you this tremendous kind of knowledge of like, just let that person be, like, don't judge. That's one of the biggest things I've learned, is like, just don't judge. Like, you don't know what's going on with that person. Just let them be. That's the thing that kind of bugs me or pisses me off about the whole new age thing. Because I love meditation and yoga and even though I don't really practice yoga anymore, but I love to meditate. And there are these schools where it's this whole like, you know, take responsibility for your own healing, yada, yada. And I really does annoy the pants off me, because it's just because then you're placing blame, and it's not fair. It's just not fair. It's not okay.
There's no way of saying, well, Jane, I can control my bowels, so why can't you control yours? You know, that's
Right.
that would just be bizarre.
I know, but you'd be surprised. Not everyone, people have weird psyches and make you wrong for that kind of thing, or just don't know how to handle it, or I don't know. You do meet some angels, and some people who are very kind, and sometimes you meet some people who are not so kind.
So do you hear people, just like with cancer or addiction, people using this fighting metaphor? Jane, you have to fight this thing. You will win. We will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them. Winston Churchill is going to fuck up your MS, Jane Gould.
I love that you said that. It's so funny. The whole thing, the slogan,
yes,
MS is "You are stronger than MS," which is
and
bullshit. That's complete
bullshit.
And I see when the national, like the MS Society posts, I'm like, it's just fucking bullshit. Clearly, the person who came up with that slogan doesn't have fucking MS. Well, they might have relapse remitting. They definitely don't have fucking progressive. Definitely. Because if they ask me, that slogan would not be that slogan.
We can't say, if you fight certain cancers, you are setting yourself up to lose. You are not going to beat this particular kind of, like, it's this, if you like, I'm going to fight death and I'm going to win. No, ultimately death will win, right?
Right? That's the only thing I'm sure of this life.
But you seem very chipper. You seem very, we would call it acceptance in the world of recovery, that you have accepted that eventually MS is going to take you out unless a bus takes you out.
Yeah, I have. It's interesting because in the book, what I'm doing is I am writing in little sections at the moment. And I just was writing a section about like dying. It is interesting because I do know, for example, a year ago, I could walk into the shower and shower on my own and get myself dressed and into bed. Now, a year on, nothing has changed, but I can't do that anymore. So a year on, my husband has to get me in the shower. He has to help me. He has to get me dressed, and he has to put me to bed. So I can watch and I can see where it's going. I have spent a long time thinking about death. I've done a lot of research about assisted dying. Oh, sorry. In America, it's called assisted dying or something. And then in Europe, it's like right to die or something, vice versa. So I've done a lot of research about what states require, how to die in Switzerland. I've done a lot of research. I've planned my funeral. So there's a document in my Google Drive called funeral with everything written down. If my kids and husband want it, I call him my husband, he's my partner. It's just ease. If they want to go for that, they can. I've got an arrangement with my 3 best friends, one in Oregon, one in California, one in London, about keeping me alive, because they all know my wishes, which is when I can no longer feed myself or breathe by myself, I don't want to be alive. I mean, I know everyone's really different, and there'll be some people who think that's selfish or whatever, but that's just me and that's my decision. So as long as 2 out of 3 of them agree, then they'll do that. Like, so I've got all of these things in place. My daughter and I have talked about getting meds on the black market, and then she would sit with me in bed while I take my last breath. So I've planned this stuff, and I know I talk about it matter of factly, but I've had, like you said earlier, it's here. Like, I can see it's coming. 6 months ago, I could dress myself and get into bed. Now I can't. So it's only a matter of time. There's nothing is going to magically change. I've tried everything and it's progressive. and I can see my body. I know where it's going. So in a way, I think I'm blessed because I have the luxury of seeing it. But on the flip side, that's kind of bollocks as well, really. I'm just trying to get by without going completely mad.
How old are your kids and how are they doing with this?
They're 18 and 20. My son doesn't talk about it very much. He's, an athlete at university, and we don't talk about it much with him. He's incredibly helpful though. He's 6'2", and if I need picking up or anything, he just wrap his arms around me and pick me up. And he's very patient and very sweet. But we don't have conversations about it. My daughter really does want to talk about it, and we have had lots of conversations. She's also had to do some crappy stuff, which breaks my heart. Like I needed to go pee one time, and I knew I couldn't. See, I can't walk very fast, so I knew I couldn't get to the bathroom. So she held the garbage pail in the kitchen so that I could pee into it, and then she cleaned up, which that's brutal. But she's wonderful. She's in New York at university, and she's studying fashion, and she's just doing her final dissertation this year about ADA fashion, because her big belief, she's really into self-expression, and she wears fantastic clothes and she's cool and awesome. Her belief is that clothes should express who we are, but most people with disabilities tend to live in t-shirts and sweatpants because our fingers won't work and do, buttons and zippers, and so we can no longer express ourselves. So her final dissertation is about changing that and how to change that to make fashion accessible for all. And she's very sweet, and she's a cool cat. So I think both of my kids understand and would understand that when I decide I can't do it anymore, they know that I can't. It's not me being selfish. And I've thought about suicide. I think about suicide quite a lot, but I won't commit suicide because of them. So I know that I will talk to them and go a different route if I need to, when it gets enough, when I'm done.
That's quite brave.
Thank you.
When you started to have your husband, partner carry you to the shower, you feel kind of guilty about that?
It's awful.
But I'm sure he says, Jane, this is fine. This is...
Oh, 100%. I mean, he worries about his back sometimes.
But you're not that heavy.
I'm not that heavy, but he does, if he has to pick me up at a weird angle, he can hurt his back. So that's the only concern, but he's totally fine. When he and I got together, he knew I had MS before we got together, and he knew what could potentially happen. And so he went into it open-eyed. And
y'all have been together for how long?
10 years, 11 years.
Wow, yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's just amazing. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What does your funeral service look like?
Do you know what? I want my ashes flown away off the Marin Headlands above the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh, how beautiful.
And then I've because that's my favorite place in the world, as the ocean meets the bay. And then I've got a few tunes that are actually old school rave tunes from back in the day, my crazy party club days. And,
dare I ask? Does it spoil the surprise if I ask what some of them are?
One of them would be by Moby. That's all you'll get. I don't know if you know Moby's LA electronica musician.
Of course. And any readings?
I have a few ideas, but nothing yet, because I kind of add to it and take away from it at the moment.
Your obit, have you written?
I haven't written my obit. Mm-mm.
It's very instructive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I always ask people is, who will speak? Who do you want to speak?
I would probably just have my kids speak, or if I could have anyone in the world. I haven't thought of that. Here's the thing. I don't really like being center of attention. Like, I really don't. So I'd rather it was just like a handful of friends who just kind of all said something small rather than it was a big deal.
If you got hit by lightning today, what's your legacy?
That I love my kids. Like, that's it. The only thing I knew I wanted to do when I came onto this planet was to have kids. That's the only thing I've ever been sure of. So my kids, and that's what's keeping me alive. Like, that's it. If I didn't have them, whoop, I'd have popped off a few years ago.
I so honor your work and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
After all that, I want to tell you, I feel like Jane should really have a YouTube channel. If you saw her photo, if I put her photo on social media, she comes off as this like bespectacled, like scholar. She lives in Minneapolis now, but it's like she has so much wisdom, just this wise soul. I can't even express how grateful I am that she took the time to talk. She's a freaking inspiration. I don't know why anybody gets cancer or ALS or MS or any of a bazillion horrible circumstances, but her ability to remain in a kind of spiritual connection is just amazing. Thank you, Jane Gould.
Man Listening is a production of Unmediated LLC in cooperation with the Queen City Podcast Network and Balto Creative Media. Allison Andrews at Andrews Creative and Rachel Clapp-Miller are developmental producers. Sally Higgins at Higgins & Owens tries to keep us legal. Our music is A Day at the Park by the group Pictures of the Floating World. Your announcer is Catherine Smith. That's me. Please go to our Patreon page. You'll find us at patreon.com. Look for Man Listening, one word, no spaces. We hope you'll join us by becoming a member. A small investment can raise up the conversation. If you want exclusive member merch like a t-shirt, we can arrange that too.
A huge shout out and thank you to everyone who has supported Man Listening in whatever form you have. Patreon or just kudos or just keep going, Stuart, that kind of thing. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't forget to support us at Patreon. We believe one voice can change the conversation. Click the subscribe button, and next week you'll hear.
The ideal society and status of the world for me is gender-free. There's no gender. It's just you are who you are.
That's next week on Man Listening. Thanks.